Well, in the days that followed the deadly wildfires on Maui back on August 8th, many in the community came together, taking matters into their own hands. Today on Spotlight Now, we catch up with one community leader who continues to lead the grassroots effort.
Archie Kalepa has flown in from Maui. He'll be live in the studio with us. And following that, we'll be speaking with Kuhio Lewis of CNHA about what that organization is doing to help with the recovery effort. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suji and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, aloha, thanks for tuning in on this Tuesday. As Yanji mentioned, we are joined now live here in studio with Archie Kalepa. Thank you so much for flying in from Maui to join us.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
We want to talk a lot about what you're up to right now, but I'm wondering if you can sort of take us back to August 8th. We know that, and we've learned since that you weren't on the island, but just share with us briefly, if you can, about what happened in your world on August 8th and what happened in those days that followed.
Well, I was working in the mainland that day. The fire happened. And about 4 a.m., I woke up, and it just so happened I looked at my phone, and I seen the fires that was going on in Lahaina. And I woke up my friends, and I said, "You guys got to take me to the airport right now." Anyway, that getting home was really hard because the Kahului airport was shut down. So the airlines was kind enough to help me get a flight direct to Kona. My friend Max picked me up, and I bought 2 Honda generators and made a plan with my friends on Maui that had boats and jet skis to meet me and pick up more supplies. So when I got back to Maui, I called a friend in the police department. He said, come to Ma'alaya. The ramp is pretty slow right now. So we had 3 skis and a boat. And when we got there, people were just starting to show up, and supplies were all over the road. And I just told everybody, load the supplies on this boat, that boat, the jet skis you're launching first. And there was by that time, there was 10 or 15 skis. Launch all the skis. This boat's going first, that boat. And then I said, one of the dealing officers was there, and I said, "You're taking control of this harbor, launching the boats." We left, headed towards Lahaina. And I remember telling myself that I'm going to sit where nobody can see me. So I sat towards the back of everybody because I didn't know what kind of emotion I was going to go through, knowing that I had to be strong for my family because my kids was on the vessel and my wife. So when we got into Lahaina, having many years spent on the ocean and knowing my landmarks and knowing that coastline, it was completely unrecognizable. And what it looked like to me, I remember seeing a sailboat that was outside of the harbor that was on the reef, listing over, and the sails were burnt, the vessel was charred. And what it looked like to me was what I saw in Life magazine of the atomic bomb in Japan, Hiroshima. That's what it looked like. And it was really tough because people had never expected to see crying, like the boat captain, Lane, started crying. We then pulled in front of my house, and I was trying to come up with a plan of what we were going to do. And they said that Mala Wharf was closed. Then I saw the lifeguards. I called the lifeguard tower, and they came, and I said, "You guys got to take us in." So they took us into Mala. We unloaded the supplies. The lifeguard truck came, and we helped us load up our vehicles and went to my house. Then I said, "Well, we gotta set up electricity. We need power. We need electricity." And from that point on, people were calling me from around the world, friends, and said, "Archie, we're sending this, we're sending that." And a day later, my house became a hub for the community of Leali and whoever we could find in Lahaina. And from that point on, I think it became very crazy. By the time I got off the plane and to my home in Lahaina, I had 2,800 texts. I could not answer all of those texts. My mind was just, I wasn't in a place of answering anybody other than just trying to deal with the situation that was at hand. And it was just people reaching out, what do you need? And, from that point on, what I saw was it was very disorganized. Nobody knew what was happening. And so what I had said was we need to, talking to the mayor's office, and the information that they were giving us wasn't actually what was happening on the ground, in Ground Zero. So we decided to establish a Ground Zero EOC with Amos, Makalapua, Kaliko, and a few other people, Kiamoku. And so we had a Ground Zero EOC. And we began to transfer the information back to the main EOC and back and forth. And as the days went by, people started coming by and asking for supplies. And the more supplies we got, the more we were able to give out. And then the question became, is it livable where we're at right now? Is the water drinkable? Can we shower? Because Leali Hawaiian Homes was still standing. That was all that was left of Lahaina, basically. And everybody was speculating. And I said, no, we're going to get hard evidence. So we began to call the water department, the director, and speak directly with him, and said we need accurate information because that's what the people need right now. And so we began this communication through the EOC on the ground and our community about what was true and what wasn't true, because that was the most important information that people needed to have. We began to feed people, and the hub began to take care of not only the people in Leali of Hawaiian Homes, but anyone that was devastated by the fire. Anything and anything that they needed. There was one of my friends asked for a rice cooker. That was one thing that we did not have. I went out and personally bought one and called him and said, come and get it. I have one for you. And, it was just really, really hard living through that, dealing with that. It was very emotional. It was also high stress. And so starting up one of the first hubs in Lahaina was critical in the early stages of beginning to get our community to somewhat be normal but stand up. It was really hard.
Well, we are now this many months out. In the time since then, how has the services that you're providing, how has that changed? How have the needs changed?
We're the first hub to shut down. And the reason being is because I saw that there was a greater need with some of the leadership that we needed to hover from 30,000 feet. Instead of being the person that's handing out water every day, sitting down and coming up with solutions to help this community move forward or begin to help address the greater needs, which was finding housing, helping with ideas for the current situation that we're in. And, once that began to happen, the mayor had reached out and said he wanted to form this mayor's advisory, and he asked if I would be on it. And I said, no. I said, you know what? I think there's there's people out there that are better than I am. And he said, that's exactly why I want you, is because of what you just said. And we had no idea the roles of what this advisory team would do. I'll say this, is there has been no playbook for what this community has gone through. There's been no playbook for any immediate government agency, and I'm talking about the county and the state. The people that have the experience in these kinds of situations is FEMA and Red Cross. The county and the state had very little experience. And so it was hard to understand what that was, and then to figure out what the Mayor's Advisories Committee's role would be. It's just, it's nothing that we've ever expected, and every day is hard. It's a struggle when you live there and you live in that situation. There's a lot of times that you feel like whatever you do is never enough and it's never right. And that's the struggle. For me personally is all I can do is do the best I can and feel good about what I'm doing. Being honest, open, and not having an agenda, for me, has been personally important to trying to help this community any way I can and any way people want to get help. And that's always been, how I've tried to do things. So I just continue to do that.
One of the things that you had mentioned was the disconnect between what was actually happening and you said what maybe the mayor's team and the EOC in Wailuku were reporting or thought they knew what was going on, which led to some of the frustration that we heard from residents who lived in that community, is that lack of information and correspondence between the two. How has that since been resolved? Do you feel now that everyone is on the same page? And how has that impacted residents now, knowing that there was that sense of that's not what's happening? Did that break anything that you're continuing to try to work through right now?
Well, I think when we finally came to the realization that this happened, and moving to the next phase of what that was emotionally, mentally, conceptually, and just living through that, what I've come to realize is every single person's experience, situation is different. And that's what makes this very difficult. And so to be able to help everybody is hard, because every situation, every experience, every emotion is different for everybody, and it's so complex that it's difficult. And I think early on, there was talk that government never stepped in, but when you look at risk management and what does that involve, there's 5 steps: identify, assess, implement, control, and supervise. Early on, that's what they were doing. They were assessing before they put anybody else at risk. I think today, through those 5-step process, we're just in the beginning stages of control. We're not in the supervising stage of what's happening to this community. And so with that being said, being very careful and very cautious about how to move forward. I think government, someone who worked for government in the public safety sector for a long time, understands that. And I think from the very beginning, it was said that this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And we're 5 months, almost 6 months into this disaster. And 5 months is still a sprint. And so we have a long way to go. We have a lot of healing to do. We have a lot of help that needs helping. And, every day is different. And it's really tough on our community, for everybody.
When you talked about those 5 steps, and obviously we know you as a very important person, a waterman, and, all of your experience navigating the ocean around the world. You've talked before about the sail plan. Can you tell us, we're 5 months in, we're in that sprint phase. Where are we on the sail plan when you think about the recovery of Lahaina?
So, the sail plan is it's really hard because there's many phases to this sail plan. So there's two components to the success of a sail plan. One is the compass. The compass that we create and use should be with Hawaiian values. What compass we have been using, what compass we're still using today, is a westernized compass, has a magnetic north. We have to go back to using a Hawaiian star compass, a compass that the magnet is the canoe in the middle, doesn't have a magnetic north, with 4 cardinal points, 7 houses in between each cardinal point. We have to understand what that is. The sail plan, everybody has to contribute to that sail plan. But how everybody contributes to that sail plan is what makes it successful. And when I say that, what I mean is, when you contribute to that sail plan, you're putting your mother on that canoe. You're putting your grandmother on that canoe. You're putting your 1 month old child on that canoe. So you're taking a great risk. So when you contribute and write that sail plan, that's the risk you're taking, because you may not ever see them again. But the success to that sail plan depends on our compass. Those 4 cardinal points on the westernized way is government, economic development, the private sector, community, always behind. We have to change those 4 cardinal points, where our community needs to be first. Whatever other cardinal points of that compass may be is what we collectively have to decide. But what is important is those 7 houses in between each cardinal point that will hold up that cardinal point. And when I say that, what I mean is the unions, the dock workers, the Kamehameha schools, DHHL, they all own a part of that house, to that compass, where both hands are holding each other and not one taking and the other giving. They both have to be in solidarity. That will decide the success of the sail plan based on that type of compass. That may not be clear to a lot of people right now, but what's important is we have to understand and remember where we are today, where we came from 150 years ago. Westernization, industrialization, and colonialism. We've lost touch with our values, our Hawaiian values. We know how to sail through a storm. What we forgot was how to sail around one. This storm that we know how to sail through was a storm of the last 150 years that was put upon Hawaii. And I don't say this in a way to be exclusive. I'm saying this in a way that everybody that loves Hawaii, regardless of what race you are, is a part of this place. You own a house to this compass. You have a right to the sail plan. And so if I wrote the sail plan, this canoe would fail. We need everybody to write their mana'o, their knowledge, what they see as success to this sail plan, for this sail plan to be successful.
You know, when you talk about the community voice as having to be served more important in this new framework and this way of thinking, when you look at the community voice right now, there seems to be a lot of different voices with a lot of different opinions about what the future of this community looks like. You have individuals who have been protesting on the beach, who have, you know, a certain expectation as well as just emotions behind what has happened. You have others who want to just get back to doing business, and there's just so many voices. As somebody who is helping to try to lead this, how do you manage the expectations of all the various voices in this community where people want so many different things?
You know, that's really hard to do. And one thing I've learned through all of this is you're not going to make everybody happy. And I did have a conversation with one of the groups, Junior, and in that conversation, I told him that I told him that I hear what you guys are saying, and my job on the mayor's advisory is to make sure your message gets heard. I may not agree about the way you guys are doing it, but I make sure what you're saying is heard. And I can tell you this, that everybody that's working on the housing piece, from the mayor's advisory to the mayor's department heads to the mayor to the governor and his team, it's really hard. And I'll tell you why. Because the lack of inventory. When we head down a path of what we think is a solution to midterm housing, we run into a roadblock. And that roadblock may be, or has been, and I give you an example, has been lack of water, or lack of infrastructure, or is it healthy? Even before Lahaina burned, a lot of the places were dry. And so now we're dealing with dry, burnt areas. And so when we talk about putting in temporary housing, what does that look like? How would that affect the current situation with Lahaina? We're really limited in the resources that we have with portable housing. And so it's been really, really tough. But I will say this, that everybody, and people may disagree, but someone that has been at the table, in the discussions, in the meetings, many times, they're working really hard because they're hearing those voices, and the voices that have been patient and quiet. And so these different teams and working together, bringing everybody together and trying to do their very best to come up with a healthy, livable situation that's healthy for the community, especially in this time when everybody's suffering, has been really hard to do. And it was really funny because right before this, and I know you guys are going to interview Kuhio, and we're having this exact discussion about how hard this is. And, again, this has never happened in America before, let alone on an island, a small little island, Maui, when we're limited with what we have, which makes it even more difficult. So the struggle is real, and we're living. I know I'm living in that struggle because that's where I live. And so it's really hard. But all I can do is do my best, be open, as we all should be, and not criticize anyone, but hear what everybody has to say with the understanding of where we are right now, on all levels, whether it be mental health, whether it be housing, whether it be being heard. It's really hard.
How do we set realistic expectations? You talked about the time frame and 5 months in being a marathon, but for folks who are not in housing or who are struggling through this, 5 months, I'm sure, feels like a long time. What do you think is a realistic time frame for how this recovery goes, and what are the benchmarks that you're looking at so that people can feel that progress is being made and that things are changing?
It's 5 months right now is a sprint. Realistically, is 2 years, maybe 3 years before we'll begin to see the first home being built. And I'm saying that having a pulse on everything that's happened up until this point, and being at the table with these government agencies. Of course, that can change. And that's what I think people struggle with, is when you say something and that doesn't happen, they question honesty. But I'll say this, is every day has been, things change day to day. You know, like we just had a situation where people were living in a hotel that had cooking facilities, washer and dryer, but it was a hotel. It wasn't a midterm living situation. And then all of a sudden they were moved to another hotel, and they said, we're moving you to a hotel. In the community's eyes, well, you're moving me from what you guys said was a midterm living situation into a hotel with no cooking facilities. But there's complications where that hotel organization was not willing to sign a contract, and so we have to move them back into another hotel that did sign a contract. And so these are the realities of things that are happening. And you know, we just try and help to make sure that people get housing no matter what. Nobody's put to the street. And it's so tough, it's so complicated, and it changed day to day. And I take to heart what the Red Cross said was, you know, they told me, they said, you know, Archie, what's normal for us in a Red Cross situation is providing cots and putting people up in a gymnasium for 5 days max. We're 5 months, we're putting people in hotels. We have to figure out all of these changes, and everybody's living situation is different. Everybody's qualification for FEMA, for Red Cross, for any kind of assistance is completely different. So it's been really hard.
Our conversation with Archie Kalepa is going to continue. We're going to be joined after the break by Kuhio Lewis, and then we're going to be talking with Archie about a special gathering coming up on January 20th. Spotlight Now continues right after this break.
Welcome back to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. We're continuing on in our conversation as we focus on the recovery efforts on Maui and all those in the community that are working hard for those that suffered after the devastation in Lahaina.
Yeah, and joining us now is Kuhio Lewis. He is the president and CEO of CNHA. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So following up on what we just heard from Archie Kalepa about the tremendous need in the community, but also the need to bring people together, tell us about what CNHA is doing on the ground in Maui right now. I know you guys are doing quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we all see the need to help people, and when that need arises, we try to step forward. So we're super appreciative that we can even be in that space. We started off by first just trying to be accessible to people and breaking it down for them. So we launched the Kako Maui Resource Center, kind of known as the resource hub. But it was a cultural approach to help people filter through information. And we brought all of the local nonprofits, the federal agencies together to provide an experience where people could feel not like, they just lost everything, but like someone that was an extension of us. And I think that was important. We're running the food distribution center for Maui County as well, so helping to get food out to those that need food. So we're helping them in that front. The workforce development, over 500 Maui residents now have certifications so they can be part of the recovery and rebuild process happening in Lahaina. And of course, most recently, the housing initiatives. It's very complex. It's very expensive. But we're lending our support in that arena as well. And of course, we moved our convention there too. I think that was important to uplift the voice of the Maui people, the Maui community.
You talked about all those things that CNHA is helping out with and being really a leader in that area. And if you can just clarify too, you guys are helping everyone in the community. Your organization, of course, defined really towards targeting Native Hawaiians, but you're doing something just for the community as a whole. Why do you think it's important for CNHA to have this role in this effort after this tragedy?
Yeah, I think one of the major changes for CNHA has been we went from an institution that serves Native Hawaiians to now a Native Hawaiian serving institution. And I think that's important, is that people see us as leaders, not just with our hands out, but how we're contributing to the greater society, the greater need of our community. How do we uplift Hawaii? And I believe in that light, you really help Hawaiians fit in to be a part of solutions.
Tell us a little bit about this most recent effort, the helpingmaui.org site, trying to link people, into more longer-term housing. How is that going? Do you feel like enough people are actually taking part on the landlord side to actually provide those spaces?
Yeah, so what's happening is folks are starting to move all over the place, off island, in other parts of Maui. So having a physical resource center isn't going to be ideal for everyone. So we're creating a online version. We're calling it helpingmaui.com. And it's where landlords, if you want to offer a home to someone, can go there and apply. If you're a survivor looking for a home, you can go there and apply, and we try to match you up. It's going to evolve to being like a resource center, just like the one that we had physically. But the concept here is to try to break it down for people. It's so complex to try and apply for all of these programs, understand all of the requirements. So we're basically doing it for them and trying to create a simplified area for them to get the help they need.
Of course, this biggest effort, as you talked about, is this housing, and the governor has, talked about his plans about how he feels that he can help provide that inventory for those who are looking for more permanent housing through a possible emergency proclamation that would take back some of these vacation rentals. How closely are you working with the governor's office, the communications, just to keep updated on just the overall count and the need? And at this point in time, where do you think things are at when you're looking at the demand of housing based on what is available?
Well, that's a long question, but I'll say that I think we're all moving towards that direction. We were at one point all just running on our own and trying to help Maui, but I think it's evolved to where we're really coming together to find solutions. What are you doing? How can we plug in? What am I doing, and how do they plug in? So that's what it's evolved to. And I can say there's no easy fix. We've explored options. We've failed in some areas, but we've learned from that, and we've picked ourselves up and found new direction. And I think that's all part of the process. I wish it was moving faster. I wish we could provide greater housing options. I think short-term rentals absolutely need to be regulated. But at the end of the day, there's a housing crisis, and we need to do something about it. We need to build homes. People need a future to look forward to. And right now, just not unique to Maui, but everyone needs to be thinking about how we build more homes for our future generations.
Kind of broadening out and really building. I mean, I loved what you said about the shift in thinking about the organization, that being a community provider that is Native Hawaiian for the entire community. When you hear Archie talk about the sale plan, where do you see CNHA fitting into that?
I think our role has always been to support Maui and the work that its residents, its community wants for its future. So I think our role is to support that voice. I think right now there's an emergency need to just try and hurry up and get these people stability. So I think we're moving very quickly to just find solutions for them. But in the long term, support for a sale plan, first of all, that sale plan must come from Lahaina. And our job, I feel at that point, is to support that plan.
You talked about at the beginning of our conversation of all these different things that CNHA continues to be involved in, including continue to help feed those who have been impacted by this. Based on where things are at 5 months removed, what is that demand? What are still the greatest needs? Is it still contributions, foods? Is it clothing donations? What are you hearing from residents, what they're looking for and needing help with the most?
Right now it's housing. There's no question about it. It's housing. Because housing is going to become the foundation to everything, whether it's mental health, whether it's being able to cook and provide for your family, taking kids to school. It all starts with having stability with housing. So for us right now, our biggest priority, get people housed.
And from the community perspective, for those of us who live in Hawaii but are not on Maui, how do we best help? Because I think there was this, you saw this major outpouring of support, so many donations that they had to say, hold back, that's too much stuff. We don't need all those clothes. But how do we, as the community at large, help best support efforts that you're doing and others are doing to help rebuild the community?
I think the needs of the community will evolve in time. I think, right now, if you have a home, if you have a short-term rental, if you have a long-term rental, offer it up. Like let's be a community. I think also we need to keep our eye on what's going to happen starting tomorrow at the legislature. There's going to be a huge need for resources to support the long-term recovery, and the legislature is in session. So supporting efforts to ensure Maui is resourced, the county is supported, is going to be really important.
CNHA's role has really evolved with its partnership with government entities, and we know that the role that your organization, as well as Kilohana, which falls underneath, is responsible for now in their stewardship of tourism and helping to market Hawaii outside of our islands here. When you look specifically, as we continue to talk about Maui, how do you help to maybe market Maui as a tourist destination, knowing the impact and things that they're still going through, but also recognizing the importance of the tourism industry to so many who rely on it for stability and for the economic engine as a whole?
Yeah, these are the things most of us don't necessarily think about, including me to a degree, but I didn't realize that half of Maui's revenue comes from visitors that come to Maui. So they have a $1 billion budget, 500 million of that is directly tourist related, right? That's visitors staying in hotels, it's TAT tax. And so, when you disrupt that, there is impact far beyond just who's staying in hotels. So it's the fabric of Maui is in flux right now. I think there's a balancing act between how we care for our survivors without, with minimizing the economic impact that's gonna be affecting people across Maui County. I think there's a need for us, once we get through the disaster, to find a better balance in tourism. How do we tell our stories? Because what we don't want is for our mo'olelo, for our history, to be overshadowed by very commercial, surface level marketing. And I think there's a need to find balance there. I think there's value in that long term. So we're committed to this work. It's not an easy table to be at. Everybody, it's all about money for many people. For us, it's about our future.
Yeah, and talking about the future, when we spoke with Archie earlier about all the community voices and making sure that everyone feels like they're heard, we know that the Native Hawaiian community is not a monolith, and there are probably a lot of different ideas as to what should happen next in Lahaina. What are the conversations that you're having about how to, make sure that we don't get too caught up in the conversation that we don't actually make progress?
Yeah, that's really easy to get caught up in that. Yeah, I think once we get through this emergent, like we're still in an like there is still not enough there's still people that don't have a house. And I think once we get past that, where there's a little more stability, like even if it's just people know where they're going to sleep for a year, then we can start focusing on some of those longer term things more specifically, starting to resource it. But I think we've been severely distracted by trying to fix the immediate solution, which is how do we get people housed. But I think, I think there's key people that are in place. They're ready to engage. They want to engage, and we just got to find ways to bring them all to the table.
You'd mentioned CNHA moving the conference to Maui, and if you can just share with us what you felt were some of the more notable things that came out from that. What maybe came out of that conversation during that week that you maybe weren't anticipating, but came as a surprise directly because of that decision to have the conference on Maui?
Well, there was a lot of gems there. I mean, I think for some people it was more like therapy than it was a conference, right? Like they got to connect with people that they hadn't seen since the fires. They got to connect with support base from outside of Maui. But you got to see the mayors, all 4 of the county mayors. They, their relationship to one another. People don't get to see that. They only see the political side. So there's the humanistic side that came to life. And then you really heard the emergence of voices that we've been wanting to hear from in terms of, how they're doing or what they see as their future. And I thought that was super inspiring. And I felt like that was the best way that CNHA could lend its mana, is to uplift the voice of the people of Maui. And so that's why we did it. And I think, I feel it went really well.
We are almost out of time, but I want to ask you, building on what you had just said, thinking about what do you wish people understood about the challenges on Maui that you think that they don't? Because when you said that, we're still in an emergency. We still are. It feels like the fire was a while ago, but for the kind of circumstances that you're describing, absolutely, it is still an emergency. So what do you wish people understood about the challenges on the ground there?
I think it's, I think it's not over. It's far from over. We have to ensure that, in the process of whatever we're doing to uplift Maui, that, and, even for us, for CNHA, we got to do a better job of making sure that the community is involved in the discussions that are going on. But I think, it's going to take a village. We are their village that's going to be there to support them. Everybody has a role. And, I think that's what I think everybody should just be thinking about, is how do we be that extension that they need in this moment.
Okay, Kuhio Lewis, thank you so much for being with us today. Our conversation continues with Archie Kalepa right after this break.
What is Hawaii's soul?
It's the way we exist with all living things. The aina, the ocean, the sky, the kanaka, who originated from the islands.
And everyone who calls Hawaii home.
It's all of us living with island consciousness.
It's understanding that the past is in front of us so that everyone can follow the kupuna
that came before us.
It's our shared kuleana to take care of these islands.
And each other, because we belong to Hawaii.
We are Ko Hawaii.
Welcome back to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. As we continue on this conversation, we want to welcome back in Archie Kalepa as we dive a little deeper. You saw the segment there, Rediscovering Hawaii's Soul, and that's sponsored by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, organization that you're working with on something that's happening on the island of Maui. If you can share a little bit more about this march that's going to be taking place in a few days and what it is and why do you think it's so important?
So it's not a march. It's a gathering, and it's the Lele Aloha Unity Gathering. And, I was asked the question, a hard question, is this community is not united. Why are you doing this? And the words says it all. It's a chance for this community to come together, to be with one another. And some of us haven't seen each other since this fire happened. And, the reason why we decided to do this is I think this is part of what our nonprofit felt is part of the process of healing. We've had 2 community retreats, which the first one we had 20 people. And our second one, we had 40 people. And that was something that was evident with those two groups that we met with, and that this is something that would be good for the community. So it's going to happen on January 20th, this coming weekend, and it's not driven by government. It's driven by the purpose of people being able to unite and come together and share their stories, be with family, and be inclusive of everyone. And one of the things I think has been really, really special for me is the outpour of people that want to come and support the Tongan community, who said there's going to be a couple hundred people there that want to sing church songs. The fact that Hokulea came home, and Hokulea is coming to Maui, to Lahaina for this. They have a really strong sailing ohana that's attached to Hokulea, and in honor of them and honor of everyone in Lahaina, to be there and to be present is super important. And so I hope that for whatever reason that anybody wants to come and participate, that they come and be with each other, be with this community, be united, even if we disagree or agree to disagree, but come and be with each other. We have to show that, we have to show the world that we are united, because that's the first steps to the beginning of rebuilding our community, which in turn we can rebuild Lahaina. And I think that's so important and so needed right now. And we look forward to seeing everyone there. And this is what I want to say is we need everybody to support Lahaina. Just like the beginning when supplies were coming from everywhere, but now we need everyone to be with us so that we can feel uplifted to get to the next stage of where we need to be as a community so that we can move forward.
Well, tell us a little bit. I think some people have been calling it a march because there is a walking aspect to it. So tell us a little bit about sort of what you envision for the day and why that's important to make stops along the way through the community. You gather together and then you walk, or tell us what's going to happen on the 20th.
Yeah, so on the 20th at 8 a.m. on the top of the bypass on the south side of the Line Luna Bridge is where the march is going to start. It's 3 miles. They're going to do a stop where they can see Waiоla Church, and there will be some cultural things that will be done there, and then the march will the walk will continue down Hokiokio Street down to Hopilani Highway, and then on to Laniopoko, which is where they'll be greeted with the canoes. So there's 2 parts. One is the walk, the Unity Walk, and then there's going to be the canoes, the lay of canoes that will be on the water. So it's basically a lay from the land and the water that will connect all of Lahaina, encompassing Lahaina, and then the final place where there will be 3 speakers, and then there's going to be music from all ethnic backgrounds, the Japanese, the taiko drums, the Chinese, dragon dance. There'll be a performance by the Filipino community. There'll be a performance by the Tongan community. And then to show unity, all of the halaus will dance together. And then there's going to be food from all different ethnic backgrounds so that we get a chance to recognize Lahaina as a place that many people from many backgrounds came from, that lived in that place. And it's purely just for the community to get together, to see one another and be with each other. and have those conversations.
You know, I want to ask you on a personal level, as we've had this conversation this morning, you shared, of course, what happened in the days after the fires and all the work that you're doing now. You know, at the end of the day, you're not an elected official. This is purely your home, and you're being driven by just wanting to support your community. How difficult, though, has this been for you personally? I mean, and just looking at, you know, sometimes you're going to get pushback. You're going to get those who don't agree with you. And at the end of the day, you're just doing this because you love this community. How has this been for you on a personal level, and how's this been with navigating this with your family?
It's been tough, but you know, I gotta say this is I've done it purely for those reasons, just to help my community, with no agenda, with no eagerness to be a leader. Just purely to help. I was asked, I was questioned about who I was as a person. And what I said was, my whole life and my whole career has been about helping people. And if people question me and what I'm doing, then they don't know me. I'm very open. I love having a conversation with anybody, whether it be hard, truthful, honest, but you know, I can only do so much. And as long as, and I really pay attention to what is right and what is wrong. I think I'm old enough to understand what that is today, and looking at the bigger picture, what I see is a way that I can help. I'm going to offer that. I was asked a question when this first started. Somebody said, well, I can give 2 years of my life to this fire and situation we're living through. And my answer to that was, well, I already made a decision that I'm going to dedicate 8 years of my life to this disaster, because I know it's a marathon. I know how long and how hard it's going to be, and I'll stay there, and I'll continue to support from behind, from the side, wherever it needs to be, as long as we're moving forward as a community. That is the most important thing, that we're moving forward as a community. And I have no intention to become involved in politics. I want my life back with my family. But right now, Lahaina is my home. Lahaina is my family. And so I want us to get back to where we once was. Whatever that takes, I'm willing to commit myself to that. So
I want to ask you what I asked Kuhio earlier, which is, what do you wish people who are not on the ground in Maui understood about what's happening there, and then how they can best help?
You know, how they can best help us is support us in the rebuild. You know, Kuhio brought up a good point about the ledge. The ledge will convene tomorrow. And I did see in the paper that Lahaina and many of the needs that Lahaina needs is going to be a priority. And so that's how people can help. Get behind the legislation. Any way that you feel that you can help this community is much needed, and our people are very grateful. And we just got to continue to recognize what those needs are, and it's so complex. You know, and I want to say this is about the, and this has been a very hot topic, is the debris. Where are we going to put the debris, and, you know, the short term and the long term, and it's so tough. But for right now, we need to find a place to put it, because the sooner we can do that, the sooner we can begin to clean this place up, and the sooner people can go home. That's the goal. Like Kuhio said, is we need to get our people in a home. most importantly, in their home. And that has been the struggle that we have lived through every single day because of our resources. It's very limited. We live on an island. When you live on an island, you're very limited with what you can do. So it's been hard. It's hard work, but you know what? It's also, it's going to make us better. It's going to make us stronger as a people. In the end of all of this, I do know one thing, that this community, in the end, when the dust is settled, we're going to be stronger than we ever been, and we'll be together.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Remember, the Unity Gathering is on the 20th, and we appreciate you watching as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalesuji. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders and taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, important conversation was had here today on Spotlight Now about what's happening over there on Maui. As you heard from both Archie Kalepa as well as Kuhio Lewis, noting that the emergency is not over, that some of the things that the experience right after the wildfires continues on today, most notably housing. But really, when we heard from Archie Kalepa and hearing from just his heart and his passion to serve his community, especially in the days to follow, you see just how important of a figure he has become in this rebuilding effort.
Yeah, and when he talks about the sail plan and kind of reorienting the compass, just so interesting to hear his perspective about where we are in the recovery and how much longer we have to go. And really emphasizing that point that we are still in an emergency situation on the ground there, and until everyone is in housing, it will continue to be that way. He's committed, you heard him say here, 8 years of his life to this. He wants to see it through. He is on the Mayor's Advisory Council. As you pointed out, he's not an elected official. He is giving of his time and his heart because he loves this community so much.
Yeah, and that gathering, as you spoke about, really hoping to bring the community closer together, happening again, that is on January 20th in just a few days. So anyone who is in the area or wants to support Lahaina, there's a way to do that. We thank you for tuning in here. Next week on Spotlight Now, we catch up with the leadership of both the House and Senate. We have House Speaker Scott Saiki as well as Senate President Ron Kochi joining us for our next episode right here on Tuesday. Thanks so much for tuning in here. We leave you now with a beautiful shot of the Honolulu skyline. Thanks for watching Spotlight Now. We'll see you next week.
Aloha.